Yellow numbers, blue numbers, white numbers, red numbers, what do they all mean? Hey everyone, Stagger here with a more explanatory, I hate pronouncing that word, video. I'll be explaining all the damage types in Dauntless, what they do, how they work, and how you can deal them. And you will understand what all the pretty colored numbers on your screen actually mean. For the sake of this video and due to the large amount of information, numbers and other strange things, I will try my best to be slower and less excited than normal. Because I love all of you and I want you all to understand all of this here and have a better time in the game. Quick reminder that you can now support me on both the Epic Store and inside of Dauntless Store by using my creator tag Strider. Just input it in the creator tag tab or in the support a creator tab. I also stream on Twitch, both gaming and music composing, so come join me sometime. In Dauntless, there are 5 types of damages that you can deal, and 4 of them have physical representation in numbers when you attack behemoths. These damage types are basic damage, shown in white numbers, stagger damage, shown in blue numbers, part damage, shown in yellow numbers, and wound damage, shown in red numbers. Finally, we have elemental damage, which gives 0 and does not have any numbers. Let us begin with basic damage and part damage since they're more connected than the others. Basic damage is the damage that you do to behemoth's health pool and is the damage that kills it. Most of the time, however, you do not see the white damage numbers for basic damage, but instead see yellow damage numbers for part damage. The game was made that way so your screen would not be overburdened with a lot of damage numbers. If you go and hit a behemoth on its head, legs, tails, arms or other body part, you will see the yellow numbers for part damage, but you will actually deal both basic and part damage. You will just not see the basic damage. After you destroy the given body part, you will start seeing the basic damage white numbers. You can also see basic damage numbers when you hit the behemoth's bodies, which are not considered body parts. This might sound a little confusing, so I'll just say it as simple as possible. You always deal basic damage, but not always see it. You only deal part damage until you destroy the given body part. Part damage and basic damage are connected, but they're not the same. Finally, I will add that whenever you increase your basic damage, you also increase your part damage, but the opposite does not apply. This means that every perk, sell, buff or ability that increases your basic damage will give you a boost to your part damage. But for example, the Blade Storm perk will increase your part damage, but it will not increase your basic damage. Let's move on to part damage. Part damage is what you see as yellow numbers on your screen. It represents damage done to behemoth body parts. Part damage can be equal or higher than normal damage, but never lower. The reason was mentioned earlier, increasing normal damage boosts part damage. Increasing part damage will make it easier and faster to destroy behemoth body parts. I usually recommend and make builds which focus on increasing only part damage, since the perks Blade Storm and Sharpened only give part damage an increase, while Rage Hunter, Overpowered, Ether Hunter, Predator give an increase to both basic and part damage. This means that while trying to destroy body parts, you will be dealing a lot more damage to the health pool of the behemoth alongside the parts. While when you follow my example and increase part damage, you will have a higher chance of killing the behemoths with all of their body parts destroyed. The reason you want to destroy as many body parts as possible is to increase the amount of loot you will get and make crafting weapons and armor a lot faster. More destroyed body parts equals more loot. Moving on, next is stagger damage. Stagger damage is the blue damage numbers you see on the screen. Each behemoth has a certain stagger threshold. Whenever you deal enough stagger damage, the behemoth will be staggered, it will do an animation and fall to the ground for a few seconds, leaving it vulnerable to attacks. Stagger damage threshold increases each time you stagger the behemoth. It also scales based on the number of players in the hunt. An indication that you're reaching the stagger damage threshold is when you see bubbles and spinning white lines around a behemoth's head, which indicates you're close to staggering him. Attacking a behemoth's head will deal the most stagger damage, followed by the legs. Attacks to the tails and arms will deal a lot less or no stagger damage at all. Increasing basic damage increases stagger damage, and again the opposite does not apply. Increasing stagger damage does not increase basic damage, increasing part damage does not increase stagger damage, and increasing stagger damage does not increase part damage. The slower and the heavy hitting weapons in Dauntless deal more stagger damage. The hammer is the best one and deals the most since it has a bonus for stagger damage, followed by the axe, then the sword, the chain blades, warpike, and the repeaters are last. Actually, the repeaters don't deal stagger damage though, if I'm not mistaken. Well, they don't deal it normally. What I'm trying to say is that if you use perks which give you stagger damage or increase to stagger damage, even the repeaters are gonna do stagger damage with their attacks, but normally they are not able to do stagger damage. If you're playing solo and need to do staggers or have a quest for doing staggers, then I recommend playing either a hammer or an axe build. If not, then use a stagger damage build for the sword or the chain blades. The final visible damage type is wound damage, represented by red numbers. Each behemoth body part has a wound damage threshold. When you reach it, the body part will start glowing with an ether scar in blue. It will also increase the part damage all weapons deal to the wounded body part. Swords, chain blades, axes, and repeaters will gain 50% increased part damage, while warpikes and hammers will receive a 25% increase in part damage done. The reason for the reduced increase for hammers is their natural increase to stagger damage, while the decrease for warpikes is because they are the only weapon currently in the game that can do wound damage on its own without needing any perks or cells or buffs. It should be mentioned that the warpike has two types of attacks, slashing and piercing. The damage increase for the piercing ones is 25, while for the slashing ones it will remain at 50. The warpike can cause wounded damage and is the best weapon for applying wounds. On its own, it is not that great, but with a proper team combination, you can increase the amount of part breaks your team achieves substantially. It makes it a lot faster and easier to destroy body parts with a warpike in your team, even if your teammates do not have any perks or cells increasing part damage. The increase from the wound debuff is very good as long as the warpike user knows how to properly focus parts and move from one to the other. You should pay attention that only the warpike's piercing attacks deal wound damage, while its slashing ones deal stagger damage instead of wound damage. Back on topic, whenever you deal wound damage, you do not deal basic or part damage. It is separate. That is why you will see either a combination of white, blue, and yellow damage numbers or white, yellow, and red damage numbers. An exception to this is when you have perks or cells equipped which give you wound or stagger damage. Then you can see all the damage numbers on the screen appear at the same time. Finally, we have elemental damage. This is the only one which you never see, never know what is going on, and have no idea whether it's working or not. Dauntless currently has 6 elements that apply to behemoth attacks, player weapons, and player armors: Frost, Shock, Blaze or otherwise Fire, Terra, Umbral, and Radiant. From these elements, 3 of them have special effects that you can apply by using a weapon with that specific element. One more is probably gonna come soon. These effects are Frost, Shock, and Blaze. Terra should have an effect coming soon, while Umbral and Radiant have not been mentioned to be getting one anytime soon. I should remind you guys that behemoths have elemental weaknesses and resistances. Hylian is a Blaze behemoth, which means he takes less damage from Blaze weapons and cannot be affected by the Blaze weapon elemental debuff, so bear that in mind. The Blaze debuff will set the behemoths on fire and deal damage to them periodically. The damage is dealt to all their body parts and health pool. The Frost debuff will freeze the behemoths, slowing down all of their movements and attacks. And I mean literally every movement and attack and animation is gonna be slowed down. Rezakiri summons his bow slower and Hylian flies slower when doing his rock and roll ability. The Shock debuff will do a shock stagger on the behemoths, causing them to be electrified and stuck in place for a few seconds. I kind of enjoy watching them shake helplessly while I pummel at them. In order to apply elemental effects, you and your teammates need to achieve a certain elemental hit threshold in a certain amount of time. It is not the same like stagger or wound damage, where there is a damage threshold. Here it is an amount of hit threshold. I did extensive testing for this in closed and open beta and confirm that you first need to achieve a certain number of hits regardless of the weapon type. This makes it easier to apply the elemental effects with fast attacking weapons over slow ones. The number of hits required increases after each successful elemental debuff application, but they're independent. Shock debuff has its own hit threshold, Blaze has its own, and Frost has its own. There is a hidden timer after each elemental hit that you do. Before that timer expires, you need to do another elemental attack. otherwise the elemental hit threshold will reset and you need to start from scratch. I will do a few experiments in the current game build and make an update video regarding the elemental threshold and the timers. It will take a bit of time since it requires many hours of testing on different behemoths, weapons and elements. This is basically all of it for the damage types. I hope you found the video useful and enough for a like. If not, the dislike button is also down there next to the like one. Remember to also check the links in the description to my social medias, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, Discord community, where I invite you to follow me and also join me. If you want to see more content from me, remember to also click the subscribe button and the bell icon in order to get notifications. This is everything from me for this video. See you on the next one. Shadow Strider out.
Take your time.